0218 hours. The Persian Gulf is black glass under a dead moon, and inside the cockpit of an EA-18G Growler, the world turns the color of an open wound. Every warning light on the panel ignites at once. An Iranian S-300 battery has stopped searching and started killing a terminal burn-through lock, the kind of signal that means a missile is no longer hunting you, but has already decided where your body will fall. 48 kilometers out, 248 N6 interceptors tear off their rails and claw toward Mach 6, 4,500 miles an hour of solid rocket fuel and explosive intent. The pilot doesn't think, he pulls. The airframe screams into a 9G brake, and the first interceptor detonates 50 feet off the wing, close enough that the shockwave rattles his teeth inside his helmet. And in that exact microsecond, the half-heartbeat between the flash and the fragmentation, the Growler's high-gain jamming pods fire a single concentrated burst. Not noise, a message. A malicious data packet sprints down the S-300's own command link and slips past every firewall in the Iranian Integrated Air Defense Network. They call it the darker weapon. It does not announce itself. It simply moves, faster than any missile in the sky, into the nervous system of an entire nation's defenses. A second interceptor knifes past the canopy, missing by less than 20 feet. The Growler is hit. Hydraulic fluid bleeds into the slipstream like dark ribbon. But the payload is already in the wires. The war has just left the sky and crawled into the machines. Here is the arithmetic the men in that cockpit understand, and you should too. Behind them, the USS Abraham Lincoln is carving the sea at 35 knots, 100,000 tons of steel, 5,000 sailors, $11 billion of American power that takes 5 years to build and 12 seconds to lose. 300 feet beneath a mountain in Isfahan province, 5,000 centrifuges spin faster than sound, enriching the material for a weapon that could rewrite the map of the Middle East. Two of the most dangerous objects on Earth are about to occupy the same 45 minutes. One of them is supposed to die tonight. The plan is built so that the other one survives. But plans are written by people who do not yet know what the enemy will do when they believe they have nothing left to lose. So here is the question that the entire mission turns on, the one nobody in the Pentagon will say out loud until it is far too late. When you build a digital ghost designed to make centrifuges tear themselves apart, what happens when the enemy reads that destruction as a nuclear first strike? Hold on to that. Because in the next 40 minutes, the darker weapon is going to work perfectly, and perfection is exactly what almost ends the world. To understand why Tehran believes it cannot lose tonight, you have to understand the trap they think they've built. Iran never planned to fight the United States Navy gun for gun. They are not stupid. A single Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries more firepower than their entire surface fleet. So instead, for 2 decades, they engineered a different kind of war, one of swarms, shadows, and saturation. The doctrine has a name inside the IRGC, the closing fist. The idea is simple and brutal. You cannot stop the American carrier with one perfect blow, so you hit it with 1,000 imperfect ones at the same instant, until the defending computers run out of barrels before the attackers run out of bodies. The fist has fingers. There are the Zolfaghar fast attack craft, 60 of them, each barely the size of a pleasure boat, each packed with 600 pounds of high explosive and a pilot who does not expect to come home. They are too small for an SM-6 to bother tracking and too fast for a destroyer to outrun. There are the Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles, salvos that climb to the edge of space and dive back at Mach 4, where a 1,400-pound warhead doesn't need accuracy. The kinetic energy alone cracks a keel like dry wood. There is at least one Ghadir-class submarine somewhere in the silt, silent as a held breath. And buried in their arsenal, the equalizer they are most proud of, a warhead designed to detonate miles up and blanket the whole battle in an electromagnetic pulse, a switch that turns off the future and drops everyone back into a world of iron sights and prayer. And above all of it sits Natanz, 300 feet of reinforced concrete and granite. The fortress, the GBU 5-7 bunker buster, was specifically engineered to kill and still might not crack on the first try. Tehran sleeps easy because they are certain of one thing: no bomb on Earth can reach those centrifuges without first announcing itself with a sky full of American aircraft. They are watching for the bombers. They have built their entire defense around stopping the bombers. They are looking up. They are looking for fire and steel. They will never think to look in their own wires. 0233 hours. The Lincoln steam catapults are firing every 30 seconds, and 4 F-35C Lightning IIs vanish into the haze. Internal bays packed not with bombs, but with ADM-160 mouths, miniature air-launched decoys, each one a liar the size of a fence post. They release in a fan, and on the Iranian radar screens, already half-blind from the Growler's jamming, the world detonates into nonsense. Where there were 5 contacts, there are suddenly 50. The signatures bloom into the unmistakable radar return of a B-2 strike package bearing straight for Tehran. The Iranian commanders do exactly what 20 years of doctrine trained them to do. They throw everything at the sky, every radar, every interceptor, every frequency, to kill bombers that do not exist. They are chasing phantoms made of software while the only real weapon in the theater is already moving at the speed of light through their own buried landlines. Underneath the mountain, the darker weapon finds the Siemens logic controllers running the centrifuge hull. It does not shut them down. That would trip an alarm, summon a technician, end the game. Instead, it whispers a single obscene instruction into 5,000 machines. Increase frequency by 2%. Nothing flashes. Nothing screams. The rotors, already spinning at the speed of sound to separate isotopes by a hair's width, simply begin to hum a little higher. For 90 seconds, everything looks perfectly, beautifully normal. Then the first rotor reaches the frequency where carbon fiber stops being a solid and becomes shrapnel. It shears. 12 seconds later, the centrifuge hull is a high-speed abattoir fragments at 1,500 miles an hour, punching from one machine into the next in a chain reaction of fire and metal. Corrosive uranium hexafluoride floods the chamber in a green fog that eats the seals off the blast doors. And here, the facility's own safety system makes the fatal choice. It reads the pressure drop as a conventional bomb hit and seals the ventilation shafts to contain the radiation. The gas now has nowhere to go. The hull becomes a furnace. The temperature climbs past 2,000 degrees. On the surface, the Iranian commanders are just beginning to understand they've been duped, the mouths winking off their screens as fuel runs dry, the realization landing that the F-35Cs were never there to strike, and that is the precise moment the ground moves. A 4.2 magnitude shock rips through Isfahan province. A column of fire erupts from the emergency vents and climbs 2,000 feet into the dark. To the infrared eyes of American early warning satellites, the heat signature is off every scale they have. It looks exactly like a tactical nuclear detonation inside the mountain. And to the men in Tehran staring at their own seismometers, it reads as one thing only, a first strike. The dead hand protocol triggers. The order flashes to every coastal battery on the Gulf. Total retaliation. The first salvo of Khalij Fars missiles arcs into the edge of space and tips over, diving at Mach 4 toward the Lincoln. The strike group's wall of steel comes alive. Aboard the destroyer USS Nitze, the Mark 41 vertical launch cells blow their hatches and a continuous stream of SM-6 interceptors roars upward. Each one a masterpiece capable of killing a target moving faster than rifle fire. The Aegis combat system tracks 40 separate threats at once, ranking them by dive angle, killing the steepest first. The first, Khalij Fars, dies at 80,000 feet. The second, the third. The fourth slips the net and locks onto the carrier's enormous radar return, and the Lincoln's phalanx CIWS screams to life. Its 20mm Vulcan spitting 4,500 rounds a minute, shredding the warhead 300 yards off the port beam close enough that a wall of seawater buries the parked aircraft. The crew exhales. They just took the best Tehran could throw, and they're still afloat. If you'd want this Aegis crew between you and a Mach 4 warhead, you already know what to do below, because at that exact second, the horizon itself began to move. The radar floor vanishes, replaced by 60 distinct returns at 65 miles an hour, the Zolfaghar swarm, splitting into 3 wolf packs to surround the group from north, east, and south. The Nitze heels hard to port, and its Mark 45 5-inch gun begins its cycle. Every 2 seconds, a 70-pound shell, the first one catching a lead boat dead center and turning it into a 100-foot pillar of orange. But for every craft that dies, 3 more zigzag through the geysers, presenting more targets than the barrels can traverse. At 2,000 yards, the Lincoln's starboard side erupts Mark 38 Bushmaster chain guns walking high-explosive incendiary across the water, catching one boat and cartwheeling it into its own wingman. On the catwalks, sailors open up with M2 Brownings, aiming for the pilots, trying to kill the brain before the boat makes its final turn. One breaks through anyway, 500 yards out and accelerating, its pilot locking the throttle and rolling overboard. An aft phalanx slews down and stops it like a brick wall, but the blast slams the carrier hard enough to shatter bridge windows and buckle a refueling station on the hangar deck. The fist is closing. And then, 5 miles overhead, the last missile in the salvo does not aim for the ship at all. 0301 hours. It detonates at altitude, and the night turns inside out. An electromagnetic pulse rolls across the strike group like a silent tide, and in an instant the most advanced warship on Earth becomes a 1,000-foot blind giant. The phalanx mounts lose their radar locks and drop to manual. The Aegis system, the brain that has been orchestrating the entire defense, tracking 40 threats a breath ago, is forced into a hard reboot. The screens go black, the cooperative engagement network falls silent. For the first time tonight, the Lincoln cannot see, cannot talk, cannot shoot, and the Nietzsche, already wounded, a Zolfaghar having sheared its port propeller shaft moments before, is listing and bleeding speed in water gone suddenly, terrifyingly quiet. In that silence, a sonar technician aboard the Nietzsche hears the sound that ends men's careers in their nightmares. A mechanical shriek cutting through the water like a buzzsaw. A Ghadir-class submarine that has been lying motionless on the seafloor for 3 days has finally found its window. It has fired the Hoot, a supercavitating rocket torpedo that wraps itself in a bubble of gas to shed the drag of the ocean and travels at 200 miles an hour. At that speed, there is no defense. No decoy can pull it off. No hull can survive it. The crew on the bridge watch the wake come a white line of foam moving like a jet car, aimed dead on at the number 2 reactor compartment. The Lincoln's rudder is jammed in its last commanded position, frozen by the pulse, locking the carrier into the exact turn that walks her broadside into the path of the weapon. 10 seconds. On the hangar deck, sailors grip the tie-down chains and listen to the rocket motor scream through the hull plates. 5 seconds. The torpedo closes to 50 feet, and there is nothing any human being on that ship can do to stop it. And then the darker weapon speaks one last time. The virus that has spent the night metastasizing through the entire Iranian naval tactical network reaches into the Hoot's onboard guidance computer and finds a command buried in the code months ago, waiting. It executes a hard override. The torpedo's control fins snap full left. The supercavitation bubble, that delicate envelope of gas that makes 200 miles an hour possible, collapses under the sudden torque, and the weapon slams back into solid water like a car hitting a wall at highway speed. The rocket motor flames out. The Hoot tumbles, veering violently, and misses the carrier's hull by less than 3 feet, so close the cavitation strips paint off the steel in a long pale scar. It screams past and detonates a mile away in open ocean, throwing a 500-foot plume of water into the dark. The swarm, watching their ultimate weapon fail and the carrier's backup systems flickering back to life, breaks. The Zolfaghars vanish into the coastal mist, leaving a sea of burning debris behind them. The Lincoln does not wait to see if they return. She turns south, pushing through the wreckage toward the deep water of the Arabian Sea, and the closing fist opens on nothing. By 0345 hours, it is over. Natanz is a sealed tomb of melted steel and dead rotors, and not one American bomb ever touched Iranian soil. The strike group steams south under a sky going gray at the edges, crews already at the grim arithmetic of fire damage and the names that won't answer muster. By every measure on the mission board, the darker weapon worked flawlessly. And that, the planners are only now beginning to understand, is the most frightening thing about the night. Because for 45 minutes, while the Lincoln fought for her life, the nuclear football was open in Washington. The seismic shock at Natanz, the event engineered to look like a bunker collapsing, had registered on American satellites as a tactical nuclear detonation, the same lie that drove Tehran into total retaliation, now whispering the same lie into the ears of the United States. Two nations, each convinced the other had gone nuclear first, sat seconds apart from ending the world, And the only reason they didn't was that a digital ghost built to destroy centrifuges had performed exactly as designed. The weapon didn't fail. The weapon succeeding is what nearly killed everyone. That is the lesson no one wants printed in the after-action report, that you can build a thing so perfect it becomes its own catastrophe, and that the line between a clean victory and a nuclear exchange was 3 feet of seawater and a backdoor a programmer wrote on a hunch. So here's what I'll leave you with, and I want to hear where you land on it. The override that turned the Hood away was buried in the code months before anyone knew the Lincoln would be in that water. Was that a calculated safeguard, or was it luck wearing the mask of genius? If you've got a read on that, drop it in the comments and tell me what you'd have done in that programmer's chair. Because the next time we let a digital ghost off the leash, there may be no backdoor, no distraction, and no second chance. Once you teach a machine how to kill, you may not get to teach it how to stop. Hit subscribe if you want to be here when the next strike group sails into the wires, because this fight is only going to move deeper into the machines from here. This is a hypothetical dramatization built on real platforms, real doctrines, and real tensions, a war game of what could happen, not a record of what did.